And we're live. We did it. Hello, world. Hello, Laravel world. My name is Dan Sapelsa. I'm a developer at Vehicle, and myself, along with my co-host Margaret, and a cast of many at the Vehicle team, are thrilled to be able to bring you the return of the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. Speaking of my co-host, Margaret, how's it going today?
Pretty good, Dan. It's an exciting day to bring back the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. We're very excited to be here, so thank you so much. Been a part of the Laravel community since about when I went to my first Laracon back in 2017, and I've always been such a great fan, so it's an absolute honor to be one of the co-hosts. So excited to be here.
Same. This is great, and we're going to do our best here at the Vehicle team. We have some big shoes to fill, taking over the tradition that Frake started, hosting the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. So, Frake Vanderherten, once again, thank you so much for everything you do for the Laravel Worldwide Meetup and the Laravel community in general. And we hope to do you proud in hosting this meetup. And with that, today we have a very special guest who doesn't need a lot of an introduction to the Laravel community. And I know there's a lot of people really excited to hear Caleb speak. But before that, we just have a few things we want to go over, sort of some community-related stuff. Right, Margaret?
Yeah, for sure. So anyone that's new to the Laravel community or anyone that's been in the Laravel community for a while, so this might be a little reminder, but if you want to find some really great work, you can always go to Larajobs. So go to larajobs.com and find some great Laravel work if you're looking for some.
Yeah, if you're looking to hire or looking for a job, there's a lot of great resources on there.
And then next we have Laravel News. So they have a great podcast as well as a weekly newsletter that does go out. So if you want to stay up to date with what's going on in the Laravel community, please go to laravelnews.com. And then we have another great podcast. So, the last podcast. So that's also hosted by Jacob Bennett and Michael Drinda. This podcast, this season, Matt Sofer will be hosting, and then he also has Taylor Otwell for this season as well. So if you want to go check out what they're up to and what they're going to be talking about, make sure to head up laravelpodcast.com. And then next week, we got a pretty exciting event. So Laracon EU with Kaneko, he's going to be hosting. So very excited. If you want to find more information about what's going on with Laracon EU, it's going to be happening in Amsterdam. And you can check out the website, laracon.eu.
Just around the corner.
And Laracon US has been announced, so we'll see you in Dallas, Texas this year. So that's going to be the end of August. Again, for more information, please go to laracon.us. What a great, talented hosts. Speaking of hosts, we want to thank Vehicle for being our host for the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. So big thanks to them. And they have a really great team of developers. So if you have a Laravel problem, and they would love to help you out. So please check them out at vehicle.com, or you can hit them up at go@vehicle.com.
And with that, we are going to start to segue into our speaker today. The reason that we are all here, like I said, this man doesn't need a ton of introduction in the Laravel community, but we're going to do it anyway. Mr. Caleb Porzio, creator of Laravel Livewire and Alpine.js. You can also find him in recent times on podcasts such as No Plans to Merge and Notes on Work. Also, the author of the ebook Make VS Code Not Suck. And a person that I was first introduced to through the Laravel News podcast as the String King for all his contributions to the Laravel Codebase and string helpers. And there he is. And most importantly, I find that this man is nearest and dearest to my heart because he introduced himself to me as an honorary Canadian due to his origins in Buffalo, New York. Caleb, how's it going?
That's right. Canadian. It's going so great, eh? Thanks for having me. Yep. I don't have hoser yet, but I do actually say a few Canadian isms, but it's much more my lifestyle that resonates Canada.
Very nice. So that means then that we both pretend to like Tim Hortons coffee, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually do, but because I'm a real Canadian.
Me too.
Yeah. It's like everybody knows it stinks, but it's good. I don't know.
Yeah, it's comfort.
It's the cream. Everybody says it's the cream, right? Like that's the line. It's like, oh, it's the cream everybody's addicted to because it's this like syrup of fat and sugar
and the sugar.
That's what makes it so good.
Good.
So how's it been going, Caleb? What you been up to recently?
It's going great. I'm in sunny Florida, and it's sunny, but it's cold, which is a bummer. But I'm just working on Livewire and stuff,
So if I remember back, I saw you speak at Laracon US last summer, and I think that was you'd released the latest version of Livewire at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And how's the follow-up been from the release? How's that been going?
Great. I honestly feel like this is the first time since releasing it that things are like stable. and now we can just start like honing it and adding things and whatever, and we're not just putting out fires. But yeah, it's been awesome. I was just like, we're going to talk about rewriting Livewire, because I did that, and I have no regrets. It went really well, and it's like boosted adoption in a big way. So I don't know.
A rewrite success story, if you will.
Rewrites, they're always a good idea.
Awesome. Cool. So what format do you have for your talk? You have some slides to share. How do you want to do this?
Yeah, I got slides. I'll just share my screen and I'll just ramble along with these slides that don't make a lot of sense. And we're not going to do this. This isn't going to be structured. It's not going to be well thought out. This is just spew.
Okay.
So as I spew, people like hanging out think of stuff to ask Dan and Margot or whatever. I mean, you guys just talk amongst yourselves, but we'll do like a Q&A section at the end. Like I'm hoping to do like a pretty sizable, let's all talk about why rewrites are awesome or terrible.
A little roundtable discussion, if you will. Okay. So that was kind of one of my questions. Did you want us to interject with questions or maybe try to compile them? And
whatever feels right. Follow your heart, Dan.
All right.
Whatever feels right.
Cool. Anything else we're missing there, Margaret?
No, I think everyone's ready to get this thing going and hear what Caleb has to say. So,
all right. So let's try this technology out. Caleb, you want to try to share your screen, and then we'll kind of hand off to you, and then Margaret and I will step off stage. But if you get any trouble, the code word is tippy toe, and we'll come back in. We'll help you out. It's all good. We're all in this together, right? All right. Yes. There we go. I can seeing some screenception.
Screenception. Okay, I'm gonna miss the chat. Thanks all for hanging out in the chat. Okay, let me get this slide thing here going.
There we go.
We got the slides going.
There we go. All right, I can see slides. Can you see slides?
Oh wait, I gotta get that.
It's actually an ode to my favorite movie of all time, right there.
Favorite movie.
Yeah.
Nice. I only saw it because I'm a big Coen Brothers fan, so it's not my favorite movie, but they're like my favorite directors, and I love it because of that.
The dude abides. All right. Abides. Well, anything else you need here, Caleb? We'll step out of your way. All right. Well, looking forward to it. We'll step off stage. If you need anything,
wait, I got a tippy toe here quick. Is there any way for me to see my face? Well, I guess seeing my screen, probably not.
We don't know. On the stream, we will all see your face. So
yeah, you'll see my face. I won't see my face. So just tell me if like there's like a booger or anything that I need to address.
You look all clear, man. I think the farmer's wrap bits are off your face after breakfast this morning.
Coffee stains were good.
You're good to go.
Wrap. That's right. Okay.
All right. We'll step off stage. If you need us, let us know, and we'll see you shortly.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. We're going to talk about rewriting code bases today, something that is always a good idea, and if you're considering it, definitely do it. You don't even need this talk to convince you. But that's what I'm here to do, is convince you to rewrite it and also convince you to not. This is actually one big bait and switch. You're going to see. It's going to be fun. So I was thinking about what to talk about, and like I could talk about Livewire and Alpine, but I always talk about those things now. And it's fun to talk about programming, just general programming. So I tweeted out and Jeffrey was like, tell me about rewriting your stuff. Like, how did that go? And I thought that's a fun topic. And it's a fun topic because I think it applies to everybody. And as I've been reflecting on my career, thinking like every place I've worked at, I've either been involved in a rewrite or they just did a rewrite or they're planning a rewrite. It's just kind of this thing that I think is so core to the experience of just being a working dev that there's so much to talk about. So we're going to talk about everything in programming as well as rewriting stuff. So big bad rewrite. This one's for the legacy coders. Yeah. So you, the legacy coder, you work in a job and you hate your life because the code base you work in is old and crusty, and you go to fix something and there's a million tangled things everywhere and you don't know how to find anything and things are scattered, and you're working in Bootstrap like 2, or you're working in your front end build uses Webpack 0, and your local dev environment uses like Vagrant or like Homestead or something, or some trend that hit 7 years ago when you started writing the thing. Maybe it's not even in Laravel. Maybe it's in CodeIgniter. Maybe it's not even in PHP. Maybe it's in another language like .NET or something. Whatever. You live this life where you work in a code base that doesn't reflect your interests and the interests of people at conferences and on Twitter and stuff. So it just doesn't feel great. And then you go to these conferences and you feel outdated, and you talk to people and you're like, that all sounds cool, but I spend my days not working in the latest and greatest. So I can't even talk to you about that thing. Or somebody launches something awesome and you're like, I can't even use that awesome thing because I'm working in this thing. And the only way to use that awesome thing is to pick up a bunch of side stuff or like do side projects that, and abandon your family and loved ones after work hours. So it's a hard life. It's a hard life that you live. And that is the developer experience of the legacy coder. And that's who we're here to address. First, let's define legacy. What do I mean by legacy? I think it's a super broad term that people use loosely, so I'm going to define it in super broad terms loosely. I think legacy means any code you resent. Yeah, it's old code. Yeah, it's stuff that uses, I don't know, antiquated technologies and is messy or something. But really, my definition of legacy is the code that you resent, which honestly is like the code you wrote yesterday. Like we're always writing legacy code, But yeah, if you resent your code, it's legacy. And that's the stuff that we're here to rewrite. So I kind of touched on this before, but the developer condition to me, I was just sort of reflecting on, there's the human condition, us as humans, but then there's the developer condition. I think rewrites, I think capture a lot about the developer condition. And this is a big part of life as a developer is this scene right here. Like, take a look at this. It's beautiful. There's sun coming in. It's serene. It's minimal. It's IKEA focused. And if you came to your desk, like to work that day, you would feel great about the work you're doing and you would feel inspired and you're starting from a clean slate. And this is what you want to feel like when you're working in a code base. You want to open up your editor to start a feature and you want it to feel like this, beautiful and clean and inspiring. But unfortunately, we live in the real world and you show up at your desk to write some feature in that legacy code base and you really end up feeling like this. And this is an actual picture that I took of my desk, like circa 2008, working on a legacy code base. Pee bottles everywhere, cigarette butts everywhere, Yoplait yogurt right next to the Heinekens. This was me at one point. But really, I think this perfectly captures that feeling of the opposite of that. It's like you're working in the doldrum and yeah, you resent the code base. So I think that really, for me, development is really oscillating between these two states. And it's always reaching for this. That's why we rewrite. That's why we pull open a new branch, even just whatever, anything we do, we want to exist in this space. This is why it's fun to make new stuff and try new stuff, because you capture this feeling, where this is the feeling of resentment, of mess, of cruft, of legacy, of time, and a worn keyboard. So yeah, rewrites, they're great. Let's talk about why rewrites are great. Because, well, A, they give you that feeling of succulence on your desk instead of bottles of pee. So why else are they great? You get to use modern tech. That's the obvious one, is like you're working in some old tech, you want to use the new thing. So you rewrite your code base and then you can use all the new things. You have a blank canvas and you can wave your magic wand and just go. It's a really fun, freeing feeling to like sit back and think, if I could start this over from scratch, what tools would I use? That's a beautiful thing. And consistency. Over time, constraints get thrown at you with deadlines and your code base becomes inconsistent. Developers switch out, different trends come and go, teams switch out. There's just things that happen that almost any like long-lived code base is inconsistent in some way, whether it's the patterns or the code styling or whatever. And rewriting it, you get to start fresh and make it consistent. And this is a really big one for me. One of probably the biggest value of a code base rewrite is expressing concepts that are lying dormant in your code base. And what do I mean by that? So when you start a project, you start with the basic models and tables and things you need to accomplish the goal. And it's obvious. If you're writing a to-do app, there's a to-do model, But then as features get added or constraints, as like life goes on, there's little conditionals that get added around. There's a new little database column. Where does that go? It could go here. It could go there. There's a new little, loop here, loop there, a job that gets fired. This thing's kind of related to that, but not, does this need a new model or should it just be in the same model? Blah, blah, blah. There's all these little things and there's not a clear answer at the time. There's no way to have clarity. So you do your best little by little, but over time, patterns start to emerge. You go to do something else and you go, oh, hey, the thing I'm doing has the same shape as things I've done in the past. And by shape, I mean similar nesting and conditionals and dependencies on different parts of the code base, and you start to recognize these similarities. And these are the concepts that emerge in a code base. These are emergent concepts, and a rewrite allows you to sit down and identify what are the concepts lying dormant in your code base that we can unearth, give a name, give an actual file to, an actual test, an actual systematic description of, and then bake into the canon of our code base. Like, that's a really important thing about about rewrites. That's the most important thing for me writing Livewire and Alpine. Was exactly that, to unearth the concepts that have been lying dormant for so long. So let me tell you about the Livewire and the Alpine rewrite. So both of these the Alpine codebase is a lot smaller and the rewrite was a lot shorter, but it still took me like a year. And mind you, this is also because I don't have a manager, so it's just me managing me, which means stuff just takes longer because I just spin my wheels. The Livewire one, I ended up rewriting it 3 times. And the third one, I was just like, I just have to stick to it. I'm not going to find the golden goose. I got as close as I could get. But even that, it took me a year and a half is like a conservative estimate for how long rewriting Livewire took. So that's, if you're going to take something away, it's that rewrites just take forever. But let me show you a little bit of the differences in the code bases between Livewire and Alpine before and after the rewrite. So here's Alpine 2. Yep. So like I said, Alpine 2 is a really simple code base. Like, there wasn't a ton there. It's gotten a lot bigger. There's a lot more going on. But I didn't know how to write a front-end framework. Like, how do you write a front-end framework? I just started writing one. But over time, I had to learn all of these things as I went. And just like I said before, things get a little crufty and messy. So this is, I think, the thing that I hated most about this code base. The thing that I resented most was this component.js file that just contained way too much, like all sorts of stuff. Like, look at this. Oh, this is IE 11 only for some stupid thing. Who even knows? And it's stuck in the component.js file. I couldn't even tell you what membrane is. I don't even know what membrane is. What does that even represent? I have no idea. So this file just goes on forever. And there's this is the God file. It's basically what I'm saying. It's the God file of the code base that emerged. It just did way too much. And this is one of the things that kind of pushed me to doing a rewrite. So this is Livewire v3's code base. And one thing, there's actually no component.js file because there's no component in Livewire's core. When I was like sitting there thinking about all this, I was realizing that there is no such thing as a component in Alpine. It was really a junk drawer for everything else. In Alpine, you have X data is about the closest you come. So I rewrote it. It's so much cleaner. Like, look at this. It's just beautiful. I come in here and I just feel great about it. I don't resent this code base at all, which means it is not a legacy code base. And there's lots of individual files that do very individual specific things. And like, look at this, these directives here. So every single directive in Alpine has its own file, and they're all registered here. And I could take any chunk of these and comment them out, and everything else would still work. Alpine would work, except those directives wouldn't work, but everything else would, down to even X data, which before was like core inside Livewire, or sorry, inside Alpine. So anyway, I'm here to say I rewrote the thing. I unearthed some concepts. I'm really happy I did, and I don't regret it at all. So Livewire version 2 is a very similar story. The funny thing is there's another God class that is the component index. Like in Livewire 2, that's this file. It's huge, it's bulky, it does everything, and I hated it. And I needed to figure out how to detangle all that stuff. And it wasn't easy. It took a long time. But now Livewire 3's code base is so streamlined. The component.js file is really small. It does just what it needs to do. It's really well scoped. And here's something that I think is important to show you. I know that you don't, maintain like an open source project like this. You're probably more in a normal Laravel app, but every feature in Livewire now has its own folder. So you pick on any given feature like form objects, and everything to do with form objects exists in this folder. I could delete this folder and then I'd have to remove it, its call from the service provider, but everything else in Livewire would still work except that feature. Even the tests live in that folder. Browser tests, unit tests, they all live right there, which is so freeing. And it takes a little bit of, it's not easy to get to this point to allow the core to do something like this. But once you do, it's so freeing. And I feel like anytime I create a new feature, I get that feeling of a new code base itself. because I'm starting from a blank canvas and it feels clean, and I'm not like sprinkling a little bit of that feature over here and then a little bit of that feature over here. It's just all condensed into one file or folder. And we're going to talk more about this because you can actually do this in your Laravel apps. And Jeffrey is doing a course right now on modular Laravel apps. Okay, so that's the Livewire and Alpine rewrite. I just wanted to show you some of the nuts and bolts, but it was a great decision. I totally don't regret it. We're going to talk more about this, but the reason that it was such a good idea for me, or one thing that I think is important to note, is I'm my own boss, so I can do whatever I want, even if it's not in the best interest of my business. And in some cases, that is true, where you might not necessarily be in that position and you're beholden to other people. And so you might not be able to do that. I understand that. I also am able to just hurt the business for a year or two, because it's worth it to me because I have to work in this code base. I need to love the code base. I need to, if I'm going to work in this thing every day, I need to love it. And that's really why I rewrote it. And then the other point is some point that I had that I totally forgot. So let's move on. They're not great. Okay, this is the bait and switch. Rewrites are actually pretty horrible most of the time, and you shouldn't do them most of the time, says Tony the Tiger. The new system. So I was thinking about, I was at like Hobby Lobby the other week and buying like a piece of cardboard, and they couldn't check me out for some reason. And they're like scanning it, and the lady's like really annoyed, and she's like, it's the new system. And I was like, that's perfect, because this captures all the negativity about rewrites. This captures why they're a bad idea. How many times have you heard somebody say that? Oh, it's the new system. Oh, we got to learn the new system. Oh, this is just super slow. It's a new system. I don't know the new system yet. Oh, the new system, we have to do this thing. Well, we can't do that because it's in the new system or whatever. It's like, so I don't know. The new system. That's why they stink. Because like management's trying to get us to use the new system, but really what new system means is we don't know it. It's worse. And people tell us we need to learn it, even though we already know how to use the other thing and we're mad about it. Like, come on, right? Okay, another thing, they take forever. This is why rewrites are not great. They take way longer than you thought, and then even longer than that. So if you're going to budget time for it, I don't know, 5 times as much time that you think you need. And they take so long that by the time they're done, it's like they're already a legacy code base. There's 10 more tools that you should be using by the time they're finished. So because it's a big ask. Okay, business people don't get the internals of development stuff. You, in that legacy code base, you're living in squalor. You feel that way. You feel the cobwebs and the spiders coming down in the bottles of pee on your desk. But it's this weird thing where, because we're in the virtual world, a business person who's interacting with your thing, because you're working in an internal system, when a business person is interacting with your tool, they're using a UI that works fine and is designed well. And they go, I don't understand why this is so bad to you. And I don't see why you want me to take this massive money hit for this long period of time so that we can get back to where we are right now. Like, why does this make sense? There's no point in this. So even getting stakeholders, business folks, product people to get on board with a rewrite requires so much trust from their end. Like, I've thought about this so many times. Business people are out on a limb with developers because they have to. There has to be that trust relationship. There has to be this good relationship between software devs and product people where, like, but really it's like you as the developer know that, like, they're out on a limb and we're not always that trustworthy because we don't always make the most sound decisions on, like, I definitely am way too clever oftentimes. I'm way too chasing shiny new objects a lot of times. Like, they're out on a limb. So I feel bad for them that they have to deal with us at all. But I think that's a big thing with rewrites. All right, so here's a bad rewrite in the wild. The Livewire and Alpine rewrite, those are great. Good shining reviews. This is not a good rewrite. So I'm a part of this boat club. So we travel a lot, and rather than owning a boat, it's basically like a country club. You pay a fee, and I could find a dock like anywhere and just go on and make a reservation and get a boat out for the day. Super fun. Actually really cool. So if that interests you, go sign up for Freedom Boat Club, because I'm about to trash them, or at least their app. So this is their app when I signed up like a year or two ago. It is old feeling, like there's that striped background. That's kind of weird, but it looks like responsible. You know what it does. Everything is orderly, and you can tell that a professional designed this well at one point, probably 10 years ago. It's a little old looking, but it works. So this is good enough. But let me tell you specifically why this is annoying. It's good in every other way. But if I need to make a boat reservation, I need to go look to see if there's reservations available. All right, I can't just search in Florida, whatever. I have to go through these drop-down menus. You can see that one right here. So like location. I have to go and click my country first, which is like, there's like 3 countries available here, and they're mostly the US. Okay, United States. Okay, now I got to pick a state. Scroll down and pick Florida. Okay, now I look at the docs. They don't even say where they are. They just show a ton of docs. I click through them. Then I go to the reservation. I click the date I'm looking for. And then, okay, you're tracking me here. I did all that work. And now I want to see a different date to see if there's the same stuff available on a different date. I go to do that and it wiped everything. And I have to go back and click United States again. And it frustrates the crap out of me. So you're following me here, right? They did a big rewrite this past year. This is the new rewrite. This is the new system. It stinks. And here's the thing. It looks like junk. I'm so sorry. I'm being so mean to them. I'll tell you about my own faux pas in a second to make this go down a little easier. But here's like my first complaint. Why do rewrites always use full width? Like, it's like we always go from a nice constrained layout to full width layouts that are just sprawling and there's like so much space and it's not consistent. You don't know where stuff is. It just looks janky. And the worst part about the rewrite is it has all the same problems that it did before. It's like literally just like a React interface that mirrors what the bad old interface did. So when I go to change a date, I have to still go back at whatever. So it didn't even solve the problem. And this is a huge bummer. Yeah. And that's Freedom Boat Club. So, but I've done stuff like this. Like when I started in development, like 10 years ago or more, one of the first projects I did, I worked for a company and they had this site that they'd hired a design agency years ago to make this really good looking site at the time, an expression engine. It was really well done. They paid like 30 or 40 grand. So then I come in and they're like, we want to modernize the site. I'm like, no problem. We're going to use WordPress. There's a bunch of cool plugins for WordPress. We can even buy a cool theme. It's going to cost you like nothing. And we did the whole thing and we rewrote it. And I think it looks actually very similar to the difference between Freedom Boat Club pre-rewrite and after rewrite. I just made it worse basically by modernizing it, which really means like full width, huge like WordPress carousel thing with pixelated images. And it's like 50 megabytes to load the page. And oh my gosh, I made their lives worse because I rewrote the whole system. Yeah. So again, rewrites are no good. And that's why this talk is a big bait and switch. And really the best thing to do is avoid the rewrite altogether. We'll talk about actually doing a rewrite, but I think the most important, valuable thing to talk about here is how to avoid having to rewrite your entire code base. Those are the interesting things that we really should focus on. Simple cells, simplicity. So I just read this tweet from somebody today. It was like, I don't even remember who. Sorry for not giving you credit. It was like, sell simplicity instead of features or something like that. Like stop adding new features because you think that that's what you need to like sell your product. Start simplifying stuff or offering, simple features, whatever. And I thought this is pretty true. Like I use Fathom Analytics. Yeah. And it like Jack Ellis and Paul Jarvis, I think is his name. It's their app and it's like a Google Analytics alternative. And I use them and I love them. And I thought about why do I use Fathom? Why did I switch from Google Analytics? I switched because it's simpler. I actually don't want all those features. There's so many features in Google Analytics. It's overwhelming to me. So Fathom Analytics is like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh yeah, I really only care like knowing how many people are on the site, when I launch something or if there's a spike or who visits the most pages, whatever. I don't need to like track you and where you went after you left work or whatever, So simplicity sells. And this goes for like everything. This is the most simplicity goes against the nature of the curious developer, because complexity, I don't know. I hate just saying like, don't be clever. We all want to be clever, but it is really true. Like to actually achieve simplicity, you have to make sacrifices. You have to sacrifice functionality and you have to sacrifice scope and things like that. Like, you want to make the system as robust as possible. And that one little edge, we need to make sure that it accounts for that. But having a simple system is so much more valuable and it's really difficult, but it'll pay dividends. And it'll like the anti-simplicity is maybe what got you needing to do a rewrite in the first place. Yeah, only real music's going to last. Use lasting tools. Here's a code base from 8 years ago that it's called Screened It. It's this little like hack project I did at a job a while ago. And I made this Laravel app and I haven't touched it in 8 years. The last commit is 8 years ago. And if you went in this app, it's actually not that different from an app I would write today. It uses pretty much the same stuff. There's like the user model inside the app directory with fillable and hidden and casts, and I have controllers and blade files and a routes file. And it looks very similar. And I thought that is so cool that a technology that I chose 8 years ago, and that was actually, I'd already been working at the company for 2 years using Laravel. So like 10 years ago, the apps that I was writing and the tech decisions I made for using Laravel is still a good decision. How awesome is that? Even the like project structure is very similar. I think Taylor does an incredible job at making us feel like we live in a fresh, new, clean world, but keeping it consistent so that your 10-year-old code base doesn't feel that old, which is crazy. I watched a talk at one point. I forget who it was. I'm so sorry. I should give better credit, but it's like it was this wheel of progress. Like, you know, those evolutionary wheels, it was kind of like that. And it was like the core was like really system hardware level stuff. And then as it went out, it went out to like front endy stuff. And it showed like the pace of movement and how it just gets faster and faster and faster as you get farther away from the core. And that is so true, that the front end just moves so much faster than the back end. Like a front end framework just moves way faster than Laravel. And then, a pattern in that front end framework or a library for that pattern in that front end framework moves like so lightning fast. So I think this is actually a good argument for using back end oriented tools and keeping things simple. Like the blade I used 8 years ago, I can still use. Even if I use Livewire, I can still use all that blade. So yeah, basically choosing tools that last. And how do you, the best way to know if a tool is going to last is if it's already been around for a while. So betting on new stuff. As a guy who was once in that position of creating new stuff, and my stuff is relatively new, it's like, I get it. I want people to use new stuff, but in reality, if you're going to like have to live with this code base for a good while, make sure something stands the test of time and has like good monetary backing behind it. Is it funded? People care about this. Is there community support for it? Blah, 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 whatever. Only real tools are going to last. All that other BS is here today and gone tomorrow. Stick to the status quo. Using conventions is like the married couple to using lasting tools. Basically, like stick to controllers and models and stuff. I don't actually use controllers. Stick to your Livewire components and your request objects and your models, and stick to those basic patterns and jobs and whatever, those conventions in Laravel, because as soon as you diverge from those and you solve something in a clever way that might seem logical at the time, that's a big opportunity to resent your code base. It might be brilliant, but most of the times where I've done something like that, it's really just been a point of resentment. And I admire looking at like Taylor's code bases. If you look at any of like Jetstream or something, look at these code bases. They're very simple. Like if you're hungry for like brilliant patterns, I don't think you're going to find them there. You'll find the brilliance in the minutia, but in general, the patterns are very happy path, simple Laravel, like controllers and really just making small methods and naming them well, I think is the most secret sauce you need in programming. But yeah, stick to the status quo. Okay, removability. This is actually, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, but I showed you in Livewire that features thing with all those folders. You can remove one of those and Livewire still works. And that's a beautiful thing to me. And not even just that, but removing chunks of code or a method. If you're writing your code with removability in mind, this is insurance against resenting your code base, because you have an escape hatch and you can back out of something so much more easily or rewrite that part of your code base. So removing things is really awesome. In your Laravel app, how do you do that? And I think you really like my most fundamental like principle as a developer is this. I call it like the single file principle, but just keeping related stuff together. Call it whatever you want. But if you can keep it in one single file, do it. If it needs to be a folder, fine. But if you can keep everything related to something in one folder so that when you need to remove that thing, you just unplug it and everything else works, that is a beautiful thing, especially if your tests live right next to it. And again, you're in a Laravel app. Here's where I contradict myself, because Laravel isn't set up to group things by domain or feature. It's set up to group things by function. Like there's controllers and models, not post and then controller and then model, But Jeffrey, so I said Jeffrey's doing this course. I think there's going to be like a growing sentiment. So here's a trend you can hop on board and resent in 5 years. Modularizing your code base so that if there's a big, feature or part of your code base, put it in a folder where the controllers are inside that folder and the tests are in that folder and your models are in that folder. In Laravel, but don't go pie in the sky and reinvent so that you have all of the Laravel microcosm in one folder and blah, 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 whatever. I think Jeffrey's course does a really good job of keeping it still canonical, conventional Laravel, but modularizing it a little bit. And then doing that allows you to do isolated refactoring. So I just refactored the request system in the Livewire code base. And this was something that I almost was like, I got to do this in the next version of Livewire. I can't do this in this version because it doesn't support it. Okay, so yeah. So I kept all the stuff related to sending a network request in Livewire in one file. And I needed to bust it all open and do way more complicated things. And I thought I might just have to wait for V4. But because I wrote it in this modular way, I was able to do an isolated refactor where I unplugged the current setup and just rewrote everything from scratch. I just deleted that file and rewrote it from scratch. So I didn't inherit all the badness of the last thing. And so now it's in this clean request folder. It used to be one file and now it's got all these concepts, but it's still isolated. Yeah. Look at me bragging about code. All right. Accountability buddies. This is really important. A huge part of preventing rewrites is having a culture of accountability at your company. And what I mean by that is you're going to write better code when someone's looking over your shoulder. It's just a fact. When I'm pair programming, I actually don't love pair programming, but it always makes my code better. Even if you're not combining two brains to be brilliant and come up with really awesome solutions, the value of pair programming is a warm body is watching me and I'm not just going to flub stuff or skip stuff or take shortcuts or whatever. I'm going to dive deep and solve stuff properly and well. And pull requests, code reviews, I think go hand in hand with this. Super important for companies to do that kind of thing or have that culture internally, because it just ensures that quality over time. Because if it's just up to me to always be consistent and dependable and make good decisions and blah, 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 it's not always going to stick. Because whatever, I'm not a good programmer. I need people staring down my throat. Okay, you have no idea how high I can fly is the words of Michael Scott. This is an interesting bit, but here's the thing. You can quit your job if you don't want, if you're pushing for a rewrite, if you hate your code base that you're working in and you got all these ideas and you feel like you're swimming upstream from everybody else on your team and there's people who are okay with it or whatever, or business is always pushing back and you're disgruntled, just quit. Go find a new job. There are other jobs that use the stacks that you want to use and your life's just going to be happier, and it's no harm, no foul. So this is actually something that I've learned throughout my career that I really value is you don't have to stay at a job forever and you don't have to change yourself to be happy at that job or change the job for you to be happy. You can just find a different environment. And if you change your environment, you might find that a lot of problems just vanish and don't even need to be solved. So yeah, if you hate your code base and you're really mad that you're not allowed to rewrite it, just quit your job. No problem. All right. Okay. All that has been convincing you not to rewrite it. And I know I was hyping up in the comments, burn it all down, rewrite all the stuff. But we're going to rewrite the thing. Let's talk about actually doing the rewrite, Caleb. Come on. First, testing is so unbelievably huge. So unbelievably huge. If I go to Alpine's code base and npm run Cypress, and it's going to take a second, but I'll ramble while it's taking a second, I can run acceptance tests for all of Alpine. So if I need to rewrite Alpine, I can literally just trash everything and rewrite it and use this exact same test suite because it doesn't care about the internals at all. It literally just, if I hit this, it just opens up a browser and it just runs code in a browser, clickety clackety stuff, as if I paid somebody to just sit there and do this all day. So watching these test runs is just such a beautiful thing to me because it's such insurance that everything works properly. And with the Livewire rewrite, this is going to just be acceptance test ASMR here. I'm just going to leave that running while I talk. When I rewrote Livewire, oh no, there's a failure. What is happening? Alpine's broken. I swear this all runs well. Okay, so Livewire. When I rewrote Livewire, I carried over the test suite and it's still in a folder called legacy tests. And we've been, pulling them out of there, but there's still a folder that if I rewrite the whole thing in this folder passes, this thing works. Like I can tell you with good amount of certainty that this thing works. And it's also like a to-do list of when you're doing the rewrite of just getting all the tests to pass, that's huge. So even if you don't have a good testing setup, start adding one. I don't know, make that the first step before the rewrite is writing all the acceptance tests, even if they're not automated tests. Maybe they're handwritten tests for somebody to run. Write out the test scenarios before you do the rewrite. Rewrite for the trash. I think this one is really important and cool. I did a Laracast series called Building Alpine from Scratch, and then I did one for Livewire, Building Livewire from Scratch, where I just created like a very simple working version of Alpine just from an index.html file from scratch, just from first principles to see like what is the core, the beating heart of this tool. And I did that with Livewire. And when I did that with Livewire for Laracasts, I hit on a bunch of concepts like snapshots and things that I took over with me into the rewrite. It was such a good opportunity to set aside all the complexity for a minute and really just think about the core essential stuff and just have that opportunity. But the important thing here is that I wrote code with intent to trash it. And you can do this. Branches are really cheap. You can take out a branch. Repos are cheap. You could take a week. Don't try to sell people on a rewrite. Sell people on taking 2 weeks to attempt a proof of concept for a rewrite and see if it's better and how far you get, Yeah. Deadlines. Super important. You need deadlines, unfortunately, and you're going to bust through them, but you still need them. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is one. You got to stay strong. You're going to get far in this rewrite, and there's going to be so many times when to get that final test to pass, you're like, this is why the code base sucked, because this stuff is hard. And I have this little clean microcosm of a rewrite, and now I have to destroy all the cleanliness with all these conditionals to make this thing work for this one feature. Stay strong. See if you can axe that feature. See if you can isolate it. See if you can. One area we did this was eloquent model support in Livewire version 3. We didn't want to break everybody's apps, but we also wanted to do something new that was better internally. So what we ended up doing was creating a folder called legacy model support or whatever. And literally it's like the V2 stuff is in this folder, and you can feature flag it on in the config so that we're not like screwing over all our users, but we don't have to live with that in our lives. I've done this in a few places, but there's temptations at times. Like you rewrite this perfect thing and you're about to just send it all to hell because you're like, there's a reason that this stuff is really complex and hard because whatever. Stay strong. Rollout strategies. So you do all that. You do the rewrite. What's your strategy for rolling it out? You have 3 options. The first is the cutover, the traditional rewrite the thing in the background, set a date, cut over. Tons of problems with this. There's some nice stuff with this. The nice thing is you really can start from scratch and you can keep everything separate. But the actual cutover is often way too late and really hard to pull off. That Freedom Boat Club thing I was telling you about, that was months and months. And they transferred me over to the new system. I had to call and get that done. And then only half the docs were on the new system. So I went to make a reservation. They're like, oh, that doc's not on the new system. You have to call them and talk to them. So cutovers are tough for 1,000,001 reasons. I'm not saying it's the worst thing, but it's the worst of the 3 options, I think. The strangler fig. This is actually a term I learned about after tweeting about rewrites. This is, I would call this like the Frankenstein apps, where you basically either create a separate app and have a load balancer sifting requests for certain endpoints to that separate application. You might share sessions between the 2 apps. You might even share databases, but it's this way of kind of seeding a new code base and eventually wrapping up the old one and then just consuming it till it disappears. And it's a reference. Martin Fowler came up with this term when he was in Australia. It's a reference to the strangler fig tree in Australia, where a tree, or the strangler fig plant, there's a tree and then the fig plant, the seeds hatch at the top of the leaves, and then it grows down even into the roots until it kills the tree, and then it is the tree now. So that's, I think, a decent strategy for a rewrite. When I was at Titan, they had an app that did this. I'm sure Matt would love to tell you about it. He's actually a great one to talk to about this pattern, because they had a CodeIgniter app that they turned into a Laravel app slowly over time. And I forget if they put CodeIgniter inside of Laravel or Laravel inside of CodeIgniter, but it was literally like 2 apps where one was just shrinking over time. The biggest con of this is this can drag on for so long and sometimes never be finished. And that isn't a great feeling. And then you're just working in a Frankenstein app that feels weird. Here's the best option that I think personally, if you can pull it off. The one more thing option, the brand new version. So for me, this is what I did. It's Livewire version 3. There's new documentation. There's new everything. It's like a new product. And Basecamp does this. Basecamp 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 now. AOL disks did this. New versions of software. And when you start fresh with a new version, then launch that as a separate version, I think what Basecamp did is really cool. They keep the other apps going, but then they put all the improvements into the new app and they market this. And this is the thing that is the best representation of everything they know up to this point, but they don't have to like force everybody along for that journey. They can just iterate on the application. I think it's brilliant. And here's actually the best part about this. You get all the benefits of the cutover. You get your own little isolated world. You don't have to deal with like a legacy database schema or whatever. You get all those benefits, but the normal con of the cutover, of it being like really hard to transfer people over, that's gone because people can just stay on the old app and use the new app and not use the new app. But the real power is this can make business sense. And this is the biggest thing I want to leave you with is when I did that Livewire rewrite, it made business sense. I look back and it has helped Livewire immensely because V3 shipped with a bunch of features that people were dying for. So it was me releasing something that people wanted to use and attracted more people. And if you look at like all the analytics, you can just see like this is Livewire version 1 and then 2 comes out. It's like, bam, boost. And then it's like kind of riding that wave. And then this is 3. It's like, boom, to the moon. So for me, this was a really good business move. And maybe it is for you. Maybe there's a way to pitch your rewrite as a new version of something. And that's a whole new marketing opportunity. So this way you can kind of align that business thing with the tech thing. And I just wrote reverse. And this is I don't even know if you get any of these references, but this is because I thought reverse, like the cha-cha slide. And then I Google images a picture of people doing the cha-cha like a sissy girl. But I said reverse because I think it goes in reverse order. This is the best, second best, worst. Okay. And let's talk about it. That's it. That's rewrites. Should you do them? Should you not? I don't know. You tell me. Let's talk about it. Hit me with the Q's and the A's. And yeah.
All right.
All right, we got some questions here for you, Caleb.
Okay.
First one we have from Pratik. He wants to know, WebRTC, is it possible with Livewire?
Oh, this is going to be a Livewire Q&A. I'm here for it, whatever. Is it possible? It is possible. I've thought about it. I thought, like, how cool would that be? Like a chat app or something that you're actually just peer-to-peer chatting. For people that don't know what WebRTC is, it's like, right? It's like peer-to-peer streams of data without going to a server. It's like how you can stream video and stuff. I don't know. Thought it'd be cool. Maybe someday. Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
I had a question, Caleb. You mentioned rewriting Livewire, and specifically you talked about rewriting something multiple times. And I assume then that means that at some point you did a rewrite and you got to some juncture, you're like, this isn't feeling good or this isn't right. So what was that indication for you that made you think, oh, I'm going to start again because this isn't going the path I want it to?
Yeah. I mean, it's just sense, just like you would just sense that things aren't going in the right direction. But it's really when you start to add, it's really that period of when you start to add back in the real constraints and then everything falls apart. It's like, this pattern I was chasing that was going to solve all my problems is starting to crumble. And I'm starting to having to just do the thing I did before where I just sprinkle stuff all over the place. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I wish I had a better answer. But I think you just know, when you're just like, this isn't what I wanted. I wanted a better life and this isn't a better life. Yeah,
that totally resonated with me where you said it just, the new thing ends up looking so much like the old thing if you're not careful to keep an eye on it, right? And
it's so tough. And I think
those edge cases that lead to that generally.
That's why the new version concept is great because you can actually change requirements. You can like go back on features. You can actually say, you can undo a yes, like no is temporary, yes is forever. You can actually make yes not forever. So Yeah.
And I do think it was a really great point you made about like who ultimately owns the app in some way, right? And I think like for yourself as the maintainer and the owner of the library, or for someone like DHH and Basecamp, it's
Yeah.
easier for DHH to make that decision as a co-owner of that company versus, you know,
Yeah.
someone like myself who might be doing, you know, contract work with a client, right? Like
Yeah.
there's very different considerations there, obviously.
Totally. I think Adam's doing a Tailwind rewrite, or at least messing with one, at least according to Twitter. And he tweeted something like, and I think DHH actually responded to him like, totally, like owning something is awesome because you can just make the worst business decision ever and rewrite the whole thing for fun. And it's true. That's a perk of owning.
Somebody did ask in the chat, will the video be available later? Most certainly. I did have another question related to when you talked about like test coverage, it's obviously super important. This is a question I find myself asking a lot, and I don't have a great answer. How do I know that I have enough tests to give myself some confidence that now is the time for the rewrite, or now I can rewrite with some confidence? Did you run into any strategies there, Caleb?
Question. How do you know that you have enough tests?
Yeah, I mean, test coverage can go so far, right? But it doesn't necessarily cover all your bases, right? And I think it's such a tough challenge to recreate the new thing and cover all of those edge cases, which hopefully you have covered in tests.
Yeah.
Inevitably you miss some, right? So
yeah, there's no good answer there. In a perfect world, you started with a test culture, and like for Livewire, I mean, we just test everything, we make new stuff, but there's a really hard and fast rule that almost never is broken, that if there's, and this is common in a lot of apps, but when a bug is reported, it starts with a failing test. Every bug starts with a failing test. No bug gets fixed without a test that if you change it, revert that code, the test fails, you pull it in, the test passes. And because we've done that for so long, we have this gnarly test suite that takes forever. But man, I feel like if the test suite passes, Livewire freaking works. Like, so I guess it's just a sense that you develop by really using it to your benefit for so long, I guess. I don't know. And it's almost like, and if I break something that a test like doesn't capture, it's like, I don't know, we tried to capture everything. If it broke, it's like, I don't know, must not be that big of a deal. Then we'll add a test later. I don't know. So
yeah, that's probably true.
Wish I had a better answer.
That's probably
Don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
Yep. But there is also some bravado. Like there is a certain amount of like, maybe just launch something that is a little broken, because it'll fix itself in the wild. If you get some willing customers to, you know, test it out, beta test or whatever, like things iron out themselves pretty quickly when everybody freaks out and tells you it's all broken. You know?
And I think that's a really good point too, is like how important is this thing, or how used is this thing, right?
True.
You know, if you have a very highly used application that's making a lot of money, then that's something you want to be much more careful about than, hey, I could launch this thing and worst case, 2 people are going to have a bad day, right? And they can work through those problems, right? So I think really having good insight, some analytics, like you mentioned too, into like, how are people using this? How many people are using this? What are the most critical paths that people are using in this application? Because those are the things that whatever strategy you choose, you want to make sure you get right.
Definitely in the time. Another question here. We're going to show this comment on the screen because we got that capability. So the question is, how would you justify rewrites or even refactoring to stakeholders or clients that are always looking for the next new feature to ship?
Yeah, it's tough. It's that problem. This is the best answer I can give is package up, make it a win-win. Package up a feature in the rewrite or something. Make it so that it makes sense for them too, where you go like what is the thing that you want that we can't do because of our tech stack right now, or that's going to take us forever? Like this rewrite will let us do that thing, or we're going to rewrite it with that first. You want AI in your tagline? We're going to give you AI. I don't know. Like, I think that's a good way to do it. But yeah, stakeholders are out on a limb because and a lot of times, and that's why I put that slide in there about quitting, because sometimes they're right and you're wrong. Sometimes you just want to use new stuff and it doesn't make sense. And that company should just be full of devs who are happy to use that old thing, and you should quit. Honestly. So I don't know.
I do agree with what you said there, Caleb. I think the incremental approach is always, especially when dealing with clients, and it's like, can we do this in a way that's going to give you client some value, but also allows us to improve the code as we go. So I think
Yeah.
probably a full rewrite at that point is tough, but refactoring, like that should almost be like just baked into the cake, so to speak, with our process over time, right? And so, I think there's a lot of analogies you can draw between software development and say something like working or building a house, right? And I think this is one of them here. It's like, hey, you want me to put in this sink and this countertop here, but this is probably, while I'm doing that, a good time to move where this valve's located or something like that, right?
Yep.
So maybe not exactly what they wanted, but making this change is going to make this thing easier, and then maybe make things in the future easier, which can be part of the sell to the client as well.
Right. It's that culture. It's like, I mean, there's so many places that don't have a good dev culture, a good like dev product culture, because I mean, you need somebody like going to bat for you to product people, ideally not yourself, that's protecting you, and that there's a culture of refactoring and code quality so that it prevents the scenario where somebody else comes in or who cuts corners, moves really fast, and then product people go like, hey, that person can do that in a day. Why do you take a week? You get the axe. It's like that is such a tricky trap. And I think it all goes down to culture, which all goes back to like leadership and the climate, and just making sure that people are really educated at the perils of like poorly maintained software and moving too fast without doing things well. And
that's, in my experience, that's such a tough one because of like the lack of the tangibility of software itself, right? And kind of, again, drawing that analogy to like construction, if a plumber comes into my house and does a really poor job and they leave and like there's water dripping off the pipe, I don't need to be an experienced plumber to know that they haven't done a good job. They've probably cut a corner, right? And maybe that's why they were $1,000 less than their competitors. Yeah. Versus with software, it's so much. If you're not a technical person of any nature, it's so much more not tangible and hard to grasp. And like you said, that the simplest thing to look at is like, well, this person was able to produce the feature in a day. Why did you take a week and a half? And that's a real tough explanation sometimes.
And then there's like, some stuff doesn't matter. Like some stuff, don't waste your time writing tests. It doesn't matter. Like I don't have tests for the Livewire doc site at all because it's not that complicated of an app. And I'd spend more time writing it than it even benefits me to do. So I don't even do it. And there's so many projects that like Peter Levels, he's out there bouncing on like an index.php file, making millions, laughing at us because we have code quality standards. I don't know. It's like nothing's easy. Nothing's clear.
The concept of test goes always back to just like assurance, right? Giving yourself some personal assurance as best you can that the thing's working and doing what you want it to do, right? So I think in the example of your doc site there, like, it's not super important that I have low-level unit tests that test certain things or what text is displayed. Maybe what's important is I set up like a ping every hour just to make sure. Right?
I have a bug tracker. Is like that's if a bug ships, I'll learn about it within a day. And I'll fix it. And it's not that complicated, but like Livewire, a complicated system, a big app. It's like, I need that test suite is the lifeblood. Like literally it's more valuable than the code itself to me. Yeah,
absolutely.
So just quickly interjecting here with a question about, I think Haz said, do we ask questions here? So if you have a question, make sure to put it in the chat and then we'll filter through and select some different questions. I know there's a lot of different Livewire questions here too, but one other question to kind of add in here, because I've seen it happen a couple of times. Let's just say if you refactor a lot, I guess how exactly was, if you're refactoring constantly, do you even need a rewrite, I guess? I know that's more.
Ideally not. And I think like, just to reiterate the point that I think the biggest point I want to drive home is do everything besides a rewrite, like that you can possibly do before you do a rewrite. Like I sold this talk. It was like a little bit of bait and switch and I'm just having fun. But in reality, like do everything besides the rewrite first. And so having culture of refactoring, all those things that my whole like section on avoiding the rewrite, I think there's a lot of ways to ensure that your application doesn't need to be rewritten. That the first Alpine and the first Livewire iteration, I felt like they needed to be rewritten like a few months after they were written, and I lived with that for a while. But these rewrites, I feel like they're not legacy because I don't resent them. That's what it is. Do you resent your code base? Like if you can keep it to a point where you don't resent it, and how do you stave off that resention is like tests and refactoring and code quality and taking time to care for things and keeping things consistent and clean.
Is that your definition of legacy code? I did really enjoy that. Code you resent.
That is my definition.
I was familiar with I think Michael Feather's definition was like code without tests. I like yours even better, Caleb.
Code you resent is legacy code. If you love it, squeaky clean.
I think there is totally something there to you get into the rewrite, that's a huge undertaking. And I think in my experience, most often it's not the entire app that as a developer is giving me those pain points, right? There's certain areas, right? That you've always probably been on a project, be like, oh, we got to go into the user controller today. This is going to be a nightmare, right? And so again, I use these analogies a lot, but the whole kind of construction analogy, I think of it like maybe I'm living in a house and I'm not overall happy with some things in my house, the plumbing, the layout, the lighting, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right? I could just tear the whole thing down, and that's going to be a huge undertaking. I'm going to have to find a place to live, right? But maybe instead I could start with like, what are the things that really pain me the most? Well, I don't know. I spend a lot of time in my kitchen and the lighting's not great.
Yeah.
And I'll just focus on that first. How can I make the lighting better in my kitchen?
Yep.
And then you rinse, wash, and repeat and move on to the next thing. And over time, all of a sudden you're like, this house isn't so bad. I didn't need to build a whole new house. This was probably cheaper and got me to where I wanted to go at the same time.
The house is a good example because there's always that, you could add on the addition, but at that cost, you might as well move because you're not going to capture all the value of that addition when you go to sell it. Like you're going to capture like 70% or something. So if you just move, you get all that without, whatever. But that's kind of besides the point. But the point being that there's always that, like, when does it make sense to just move or do the rewrite, And with like something to your point, if you refactor your kitchen with good lighting, it'll make you feel like, those pictures I put, like that developer experience of like the minimal and then the really shitty space. It's like that to me really is everything. And it's like, it's funny how I can feel like I have bottles of pee on my desk and then I fix like one thing or I like refactor like one file and it feels like everything's beautiful and clean and the sun is shining instead of like the world falling down and hailing acid rain on me. It's so funny how you can flip so easily. So that's another point to like see if you don't have to rewrite it. Like maybe you just clean up the kitchen, add a skylight, and now you're like, oh, this is great. I love this place.
Absolutely.
I love the house analogy too, because sometimes you see like those big oversized trucks still carrying the house, taking another place where maybe it's just easier to just rebuild. That'll be good.
Maybe, I know. True, right. When they like literally take up entire houses. It's like insane to me that you can even do that. It's like, what? That's possible?
Anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
I had a question I saw in the chat here, and it was kind of something similar on my mind, and it relates to, like, you mentioned deadlines, Caleb. And the question here is, like, how did you manage to get to V3 release for Livewire? Did you have to put any additional pressure on yourself? Or the question also mentions, like, was tweeting about the fact that you're going to release this thing at Laracon, was that the extra motivation you need? How did you manage, especially working for yourself, how did you manage getting to that release date and keeping up with that deadline?
Yeah. So I did the thing that we do where I like set a date and then blew right past it, set another date, blew right past it, told people that date, blew past it. Fortunately, I'm getting pretty good at not telling everybody my lies, but I still let them slip, and I did let it slip a few times. And then, like, I remember like Taylor would ask me about it, and like, so he was kind of I let him be my boss in a way, because he was like, so what's that? And I'd be like, all right, like I don't want to totally just like tell him something that I can't stick to. And then I would tell him something and try to stick to it and then still blow past it. But Laracon was the final, like, it's going to happen. It's going to ship whether I like it or not. And I did have to make concessions. I didn't pull in all the tests. I kept them in a legacy folder that I told you about. There's things that I did. The file uploading code is all the original V2 file uploading codes. There were things that I was like, I can't make it to this finish line as beautifully and as perfect as I want because I can't just be here forever. So we got to ship. Yeah.
Got to go. Absolutely.
Got to go.
Absolutely.
Got to do it.
Do you have something right now, Margo? I don't know if you had a question. I have one if you don't at the moment.
Go for it, Dan.
Yeah. The another thing you mentioned, like the 3 different strategies of like cutover, the strangler pattern, and then like the one more thing, which you highlighted some of the advantages to the one more thing approach.
Yeah.
My question was, is there any challenges that are introduced with that approach? And, at a high level, I think, well, if I'm rewriting, I'm eventually only going to be maintaining one thing. Whereas with the one more thing approach, now I have V1 to maintain and V2 to maintain and V3 to maintain. And does that introduce any challenges?
Yeah, you're right that there is, it's not like when you're in a, thank you. When you're, oh God, thank God I'm right. If you, like if the alternative is you have an evergreen code base and there is something singular and nice about that. But in my experience, the old stuff. I wonder what Basecamp folks would say. And I know that I think they actually have like people dedicated full time to the old stuff, but more people are going to use the new stuff than the old stuff. And it's just going to get more and more like that over time. So there's going to be fewer bug reports. And it's like, I don't know, at least for Livewire and Alpine, it hasn't been that big of a deal to me. I wonder what Taylor would say as well, because he has to maintain old versions as well. But it's like kind of not that often that I have to like back merge something to 2.x. Like I pretty much treat it like if somebody comes to me and says there's this actual thing broken in 2.x, here's a fix for it, I'll merge it and I'll tag it. But if it's just a fix in V3, I don't like think, is this a problem in V2? And that, because it's such a different code base. So but you're right, that is totally a con of the total new thing. But honestly, if you do the new thing, I bet you won't regret it in that way. You might regret it in other ways, but not that way.
And I think that goes back to the control thing. If it's your business, if you're Basecamp, you could also incentivize your users in different ways to move from V2 to V3 if that's ultimately where you want them to wind up, right?
Yeah. If all your attention's there, people are going to go where your attention is.
Yeah,
but I don't want to hang out.
I did wonder, do they suffer from any of that? If I'm a developer and I have to work on the V1 code base all the time, do I resent that code or not? I don't know.
That's the thing I didn't mention, that those developers who are somehow immune to like code resentment. You just find those people that just like sling tickets all day and don't even care. Just this is my job. I feel like I've worked every place I've worked. There's been like that one person who just is like happy to do it. Don't really care about like new stuff.
People find challenges in different things. Right?
Send me the tickets. Yeah.
And there is that, I enjoy being in older messy code bases and that challenge of trying to understand it, keep it running, add enhancements, make it a little bit better when I can, right? And I think there's definitely people
good for you. That.
Well, thank you.
Say, that's not me. That's like you're doing the Lord's work. That's we're not the same. I hate that.
I mean, I enjoy a new greenfield code base as much as the rest, but
it's a good muscle to flex. But for me, that's what it is. It's like a discipline I always need to develop, where there's people like you, and Matt Stauffer says the same thing. It's like, good for you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. What else we got here, Margot? I'm just looking through the chat here.
Okay, let's see here. We can switch it up a little bit. Still a rewrite question, but question is.
It doesn't have to be, by the way. You could just do it. If people are dying for the live, I really don't care. Anything.
we got lots queued up. But this one here is, are there any new design ideas you've implemented when rewriting the code base that you would recommend?
Like code design, Caleb? Good name. Nice. It's not often I meet one of those. Are there any new design ideas you implemented when rewriting the code base that you would recommend? I think you mean code design, obviously. Recommend like patterns and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the nature of the question.
Yeah. I just have really good tests, and honestly, the single file principle, that's the only pattern I basically care about in programming, is like keep related stuff into a single file or a single folder that you can remove that whole thing, and make your methods small and well named. That's like the only programming advice that I think matters to me, kind of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I thought too, but the again, going back to the approaches to a rewrite, and specifically the strangler fig pattern, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? And then it's like anything, it depends. There's trade-offs to every approach, right?
Yeah.
And I think one that we were talking a little bit last week about this too, but I think one of the challenges introduced to that, I'm just curious if you have any experience with this, Caleb, is if I'm working for a client that's constantly shipping new features and we're in the midst of a rewrite, how can we ensure that not only that we're building to feature parity for, the day we started the project, but over the course of that, as new features get added to the original thing, how can I make sure that I have feature parity in the new thing, right?
That's brutal. You just beg them to not and to add new features. I don't know. There's no new feature freeze. That sucks. That's a big con of that approach. It really exists with any of the rewrite approaches, except the new. That's another pro of the one more time approach. Is like not one more time. What is it? One more thing. The one more thing approach is like that huge benefit of the new stuff just gets added to the new thing and not the old thing. It just makes the new thing more marketable. It makes business more happy and eager for you to launch the new thing. It's like, tough. Bye, Margot.
Margot's back. She'll be back. I had a question about we talked about not fighting the framework. And specifically, or maybe not that specifically, but the my question is in regards to like approaches that you've encountered to be able to avoid maybe the necessity, or maybe even the feeling that I need to rewrite in the future, right? And I think specifically you talked about modularity, you talked about Jeffrey's course, and you said I think in was it Alpine? You've kind of moved to more of like a modular structure a little bit.
Yeah,
There
both
she
of them,
is.
but Livewire pretty extreme.
Yeah. I guess
Back.
like is that a takeaway for you? And do you have any other approaches
Yeah.
that you've picked up to like, if I keep this in mind while I'm writing this new thing in the future, I'm less likely to resent my code.
Yeah, it's really for me, the patterns, I don't know if they apply to applications as well as they apply to like package type system stuff.
That's fair.
But the two patterns that I've doubled down on and I have no regrets is first that modular pattern of keeping things modular and really isolated. But the thing that needs is an event system that those hook into, because they need ways to hook into different parts of the life cycle. They can't just live on an island. Something has to call that code somewhere. They have to be in the pipeline. And a really lightweight event system like I have in Livewire's core, I just literally have like a function called trigger. It's just like a function. You say trigger, a string, and then data that you pass it. And anywhere else in the code base, you just say on, and then that string, and then a callback that gets that stuff. That really basic thing. It's like an event system introduces indirection to your code base. You can't follow code execution anymore because there's that disconnect where it's like the trigger happens, but then what are all the listeners, That's the huge trade-off. And I don't know if it's always worth it for code bases, but for my application, it is so worth it. And I'm really glad I made that trade-off of indirection. So,
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point you make about what is the code itself? Is it a library that's used by millions of people? Is it an application that's been around for 20 years? Anywhere in between, right? That definitely matters a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely. Welcome back, Margaret.
Thank you. I don't know what happened.
I'm looking to the chat and I'm seeing not quite on the topic of rewriting, but there are a few questions that are on the same topic, and I'll show one of them here. But you debuted some Livewire dev tools at Laracon, and there are some people in the chat, Caleb, wondering when that's something.
Oh yeah, I meant to like talk about this. So I think I might let this be a failed promise. I have like and this
promise
is the first
that
time
will not
anybody's
resolve?
hearing about. This is the first time anybody's hearing about this. I haven't talked about this at all. I may attempt to resolve it, but basically, I've always like bragged about how like I take forever to do stuff, but I do the stuff. I don't like say I'm going to do something and then not do it. I just take 2 years longer. This could still be that, but I might abandon ship on this one because it's the least valuable place to put my time right now. And that's so clear to me that the only reason I would be doing it is to fulfill, I feel bad because I was definitely like showed a pretty much finished product on stage and was like, you can have this. And now I'm just going to rip it out. So I'm really sorry to say that I'm currently not working on it. And I have been saying that it's like the next thing I'll work on. But I'm a liar. I think developers are just liars because you just have such high hopes for yourself and then reality sets in. So I'm a liar.
That's all right. We won't hold it against you. And I think maybe there's an opportunity there for some community support, right?
Yeah, and there actually is a community dev tools that Marcel maintains. But maybe I should release to the wild. The version I have is we'll have to figure that out. I don't know. I want to maintain. If the maintenance burden wasn't so huge, and it's just going to be, it's tough. It's a tough project, and it's like going to take so much. Oh, Daniel holds it against me. Shit. It's gonna. We can swear on this. Are we allowed to swear on this?
I don't know.
We might not be allowed to swear on this. You didn't tell me.
We'll take care of it in post edit.
Don't worry.
All right. Well, I think there's been a lot of involvement in the chat and discussion here, and I want to ultimately be respectful of your time, Caleb. So maybe, Margot, I don't know if we could have maybe one or two more questions we could field here, and then kind of wind down our discussion after that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking because there's a lot of great questions here, and a lot of them could consist of a very long answer. But looking at more of the shorter questions,
I'll try to rapid fire. I'll try not to do the ramble thing.
Okay, cool. So sticking to the rewrite topic, so how about not a full rewrite, rather incrementally rewrite bits of the code base every now and then?
think we largely talked about
Yeah.
that, right?
You should do that. Yep.
Yeah.
Very much
Do
so.
it.
That's the
Next
correct
question.
answer.
Okay, this
Yes,
one looks
correct.
short questions. And then, well, then we're kind of pretty specific. So this one's about Livewire.
Fine.
Someone
Great.
specifically asked, you said Livewire v3 is a lot better, but will
Yeah.
you rewrite v4 from scratch again?
Hell no. Hopefully never. I'm sorry. Heck no. Hopefully never. No, I love the code base. It's going to be the same code base for a while. Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, so those are 2 quick questions. We'll kind of maybe play around with what we're going to do with these other questions, but thank you so much, Caleb. I think we haven't, you a very formal thank you, but thank you for being our very first inaugural speaker. So
It's a great time. Thanks for
we're
hanging out, everybody.
Certainly,
Thanks for having me.
I could speak for Margaret and myself. A lot of nerves on our side, being the first time hosting this and wanting to do the Laravel community proud, and definitely very easy to have such a friendly guest as yourself and knowledgeable guest, Caleb. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. And I know a lot of people really enjoyed it.
Well, you guys are the best. I'm super glad that this has been rehabilitated, and especially with the likeness of you fine vehicle folks.
Absolutely,
it's gonna be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Caleb. We'll bid you adieu and send you on your day. Enjoy the hopefully sunny weather in Florida, and we will talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.
This
Caleb.
chat
Thanks
is
so much.
unhinged. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
awesome.
All right. Well, there we have it. Thanks again, Caleb, for joining, and thanks for everyone for tuning in and participating in the chat. Very much appreciated, and it feels really great to get our first edition in the resumption here of the Worldwide Meetup under our belts here, right, Margaret?
That's right. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We have a couple more announcements for you. So if you're staying, please listen up for some future announcements that we got going on. So we have a monthly meetup. We're very excited to welcome Joe.
When will the monthly meetup take place, Margaret?
So this will be happening on the last Tuesday of February. So to be absolutely certain about what that date exactly is, and that's what we're going to try to aim to do for every meetup, have it the last Tuesday. We're going to be doing it on February 27th at 12 p.m. So same time. We're trying to also figure out the best time that we can get everyone worldwide to be able to tune in. And again, we will have this video posted on the Laravel YouTube channel under the live section. So make sure to check that out if you can't make our next one. But we're going to have at least 1 or 2 speakers. So yes, our next one, we'll have Joel Claremont. He's going to be talking about life beyond DD. So very excited to have him. Thank you so much, Joel. And also Kaneko as well. So I'm not exactly sure if Kaneko has his talk planned yet, but we have Kaneko's musings for now. But stay tuned for their talk next month. And then to stay connected, to make sure you have that reminder, make sure to go to meetup.laravel.com, sign up for the reminders. You'll get an email reminder about the event, and you'll also stay tuned for any other news that we have going on.
Absolutely. Awesome. And with that, I think we're about wrapped up here. Margaret, we did it. We made it to the finish line here. Any parting thoughts for the community here before we sign off?
Thank you so much for being such a great community.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited to be a part of this and to see where this goes. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you again. Super stoked to be have this meetup resurrected, and we hope to do the Laravel community proud. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you at the end of February. Bye now.